The external compositing tag was added to the application a couple of versions ago, and it answered a very important question for working with After Effects. The question was this: how do I get the position and rotation of an object in Cinema 4D into After Effects? Prior to this tag being added to the application, there was a cumbersome workaround, but now that we have the tag, it's really, really easy. So what I've got here is the same 3D versus 2.5D animation that we're using in this chapter. And the verses and the 2.5D that slide into frame, these are just 2D type splines that have no geometry on them. And I want to be able to replace these with After Effects type. And so I need to have a way to get the animation from these objects that I've already done here in C4D into After Effects. And that's where the external compositing tag comes in. So if I right-click on the versus position and go to Cinema 4D tags and then do external compositing, and that's different than the compositing tag. I want to do external compositing. Now that I've added that tag to the object, I can go over to it and select the tag properties. And you see there's some options here. And we're going to leave the children unchecked because we don't have any children for our object. And we'll leave the cache option on, and everything else we'll leave alone as the defaults. For the most part, you don't really need to touch those. If you wanted to have a solid layer for your object inside of After Effects, you could activate the solid option, and when we get into After Effects, you'd see that there was a solid layer in exactly the same location as your object here in C4D. But by default, it will give you a null object, so I don't need the solid option turned on. I'll add the same tag to the 2.5D position object here, and Cinema 4D tags, external compositing, and leave all the options alone just like before. So what that's going to give us when we actually do our rendering, which we're going to complete in another movie, but when we do that rendering, what we're going to have is the position information inside of After Effects. And let me show you what that looks like. I've pre-rendered and composited this ahead of time, and I'm going to move over to After Effects to show you what that looks like. So here I am in After Effects. I'll scroll up through this animation. You'll see that the verses and the 2.5D that come into frame, these are After Effects type layers. You can see here's the 2.5D type layer. It's just an After Effects 2.5D layer. And it's moving with the 3D scene here in After Effects. And that's because I exported the camera and position and rotation data from Cinema 4D and brought it here at After Effects. And that was made possible by the external compositing tag. Now, I'm using the term 2.5D because After Effects is not a true 3D application. It's actually sort of a hybrid. It does everything in 2 dimensions, but it can also do things in 3 dimensions as well, but it can't produce actual geometry. And so that's why we call it a 2.5D application. It can move 2-dimensional layers in a 3-dimensional space, but it can't produce actual 3D geometry. So that compositing tag information was now sent from Cinema 4D into After Effects, and that gives me the null object that actually has the same name. You can see versus position, 2.5D position, and I name those very specifically. If I move back to Cinema 4D, you can see my type objects here in Cinema 4D are called versus position and 2.5D position. So the external compositing tag is that sophisticated. It actually uses the name of the object that you have applied it to, and you see an object in After Effects that shows up in the same location with the same name, same position and rotation that it had in Cinema 4D. And that really opens up a lot of doors for compositing. So what we've done in this movie is to add the external compositing tag, which is going to create data that we're going to use in all the other movies in this chapter. And that's going to allow us to track this 2-dimensional type objects in After Effects using the 3D data from Cinema 4D.